So, you've probably heard the name Sam Altman. He's been called the Oppenheimer of our age, the face of the whole AI revolution, pretty much one of the most influential people on the planet. But behind all the headlines and the launch of ChatGPT is this incredible story of ambition, controversy, and just a relentless drive to build the future. So, what really makes this guy tick? Let's dive in.
Subscribe to Sion for more fascinating, insightful, and wealthy stories.
Right. So who is the man shaping our AI future? I mean, what's driving the CEO of OpenAI, and what does his past tell us about where he might be taking all of us?
And wow, what a ride it's been. We're talking about a 19-year-old Stanford dropout who starts his own company, then launches the nonprofit that would literally change the world, and then somehow survives one of the most insane corporate showdowns in Silicon Valley history, and he did all of that in less than 20 years.
To really get who the CEO is today, we've got to go back, way back. Turns out, he was a kid who was seemingly born to do this. You know, Sam Altman's journey in tech started super early. He got his first computer, an old Apple Macintosh, when he was just 8 years old. And he wasn't just playing games on it. No, he was teaching himself to code and literally taking the hardware apart just to see how it worked. This obsession naturally led him to Stanford for computer science. But the classroom just wasn't for him. After only 2 years, he dropped out to go chase his first big idea.
And that first big idea, well, it put him on a path from being just another startup founder to becoming one of Silicon Valley's most powerful kingmakers. At just 19 years old, think about that, he co-founded a company called Looped. Now this is way back in 2005, long before apps like Foursquare or even Find My Friends were a thing. The idea was to use your phone's location to see where your friends were. He became the CEO and actually managed to raise over $30 million in venture capital, which was a huge deal for a founder that young.
But here's the thing, Looped never really took off. It struggled to get a big user base. In 2012, it was sold for $43.4 million. Now that's not a failure by any means, but it wasn't the home run he was hoping for. Still, for a first-time founder, it was a major financial success, and it totally set the stage for what he did next.
And his next move was a massive leap in scale. He went from building one single startup to becoming the president of Y Combinator, the legendary startup factory. Suddenly, his influence just exploded. He was mentoring over 1,000 companies. But a familiar pattern started to show up. Just like at Looped, where the board had tried to oust him for deceptive and chaotic behavior, his time at Y Combinator also ended with some pretty similar issues around mistrust.
And this wasn't just some rumor. Y Combinator's co-founder, Paul Graham, who had been a mentor to Altman, was really clear about it. He said Altman was removed because the other partners, well, they just didn't trust him. And this theme, this idea of mistrust and not being fully candid with colleagues, is so crucial. Just keep it in the back of your mind, because it's going to come back in a very big way later on. But getting pushed out of YC, that didn't even slow him down, not one bit, because all this time, he was quietly building a massive personal investment empire on the side. And the scale we're talking about here is just staggering. His personal portfolio is estimated to be worth around $2.8 billion. He's got investments in over 400 different companies. It just goes to show you his incredible eye for what's next and how central he was to the entire tech ecosystem.
And don't think for a second this is just about software. Nope. Sure, he was an early investor in giants we all know, like Stripe, Airbnb, and Reddit. But he was also making these huge, kind of crazy moonshot bets on the future. We're talking companies like Retro Biosciences, which is trying to extend human life by 10 years, and Helion Energy, which is chasing the ultimate prize in clean energy, nuclear fusion.
So, while he's making all this money, he's also crafting this public image, this persona of a big-picture thinker on huge societal issues. He's signed the Giving Pledge, which is a promise to donate most of his fortune. He's also a huge advocate for universal basic income, the idea of giving everyone a regular check, no strings attached. He's even come up with a futuristic spin on it he calls Universal Basic Compute, where everyone gets access to powerful AI as a basic right.
But as big as all that was, it was all just the opening act for the one project that would define his entire career and, let's be honest, probably our future.
So when Altman co-founded OpenAI back in 2015, its mission, it was incredibly idealistic. Super noble sounding, right? It was a nonprofit with this one massive goal: to make sure that artificial general intelligence, or AGI, that's an AI smarter than any person, would actually benefit all of humanity.
and not just a handful of powerful corporations.
And for a few years, OpenAI was this well-respected but kind of niche research lab. Then, November 2022 happened. The release of ChatGPT wasn't just a product launch. It was like a lightning bolt. It set off this global AI frenzy, put the technology into the hands of millions, and it turned Sam Altman from a Silicon Valley insider into a global household name, almost overnight.
So he's at the absolute peak, right? He's meeting with world leaders, he's testifying before Congress, basically shaping the global conversation on AI. And then, bam, the floor just completely drops out from under him.
Okay, buckle up, because what happened next was one of the wildest weeks in tech history. On a Friday, out of nowhere, the OpenAI board fires him. By Sunday, his biggest investor, Microsoft, says, fine, we'll hire him to lead a new AI lab. Then on Monday, almost every single employee at OpenAI signs a letter threatening to quit and go with him. And by Tuesday, he was back as CEO with a brand new board. It was just a stunning, unbelievable show of power.
So you're asking why? Why would they fire him? Well, the official reason from the board was so frustratingly vague. All they said was that he was not consistently candid in his communications. And that phrase, it sounded an awful lot like those same concerns about mistrust that had followed him all the way from Looped and Combinator.
But really, what forced the board's hand was this one number. Over 700 of OpenAI's 770 employees signed that letter. This wasn't just a few loyal friends, it was a full-blown employee revolt. They basically looked at the board and said, it's either him or it's us. The board had absolutely no choice but to back down.
It was only after things calmed down a bit that we started to hear the other side of the story. A former board member, Helen Toner, came out and laid out some really serious allegations. She claimed that Altman had hidden the launch of ChatGPT from them, that he hadn't told them about his own financial stake in an OpenAI fund, and even that some executives had reported psychological abuse. She even brought up the old stories from Loopit, trying to paint this picture of a pattern of behavior that goes back decades. So what are we left with? It's this incredibly complex, kind of contradictory picture of the guy at the absolute center of the AI revolution. And that really gets to the core of it, right? The two sides of Sam Altman. On one hand, you've got the visionary, the guy building AGI for all humanity, who's pledged his fortune away and talks about big ideas like UBI. But on the other hand, you've got the agitator, the leader who's been described as chaotic, not candid, and has been pushed out of jobs because of a fundamental mistrust from the people he works with.
So this all leads to one single, massive question. The technology Sam Altman is building is absolutely going to change our world. There's no doubt about that. But given everything we know, the ambition, the secret investments, the repeated issues over his leadership and his honesty, is his vision of the future one we can actually trust? The answer to that question might just define our own.
Subscribe to Sion for more fascinating, insightful, and wealthy stories.